time is really running out now to accumulate a whole Bitcoin. This is the very last warning here from Adam Back. Our monetary system is broken, and Bitcoin is the best answer to that. And Bitcoin will replace all fiat currencies. That's what Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong is saying now. But Jeff Booth takes it a step further and says, Bitcoin will reprice everything in the world, and even a small percentage of a whole Bitcoin could be enough to live on forever.
All assets in the world currently equal about $900 trillion. Not 900 trillion of paper money, of purchasing power, and you divide it by 21 million. That number equals 43 million. So if you had a small percentage of a Bitcoin, that would be enough to live forever. And it's just, wait, what? Why?
So that means, for example, 0.2778 Bitcoin could be enough to live on forever. And it's not just some random guy saying this, it's Jeff Booth. I'll also link the full video for you below from Simply Bitcoin. It's already gotten over 100,000 views in just a few days. We're going to take a look at these highly explosive statements, and regardless of any global conflicts, disputes, or weak phases for Bitcoin, here we're focusing on the long-term perspective for Bitcoin. And even if Bitcoin corrects or something like that, it's irrelevant for the long-term development. That's something that will become clear to you again today. In this clip, Jeff Booth also talks about the collapse of the fiat money system and how that will give Bitcoin a boost. But first, let's hit the like button below so we can really get things going here. So the Bitcoin price pumps up, so we keep that long-term mindset. And so these videos reach a lot of people who are just in it for the short term. Yeah, and if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And Adam Back, who was mentioned by Satoshi in the white paper, makes it very clear here. The peak of the whole coiners is near. Stack faster, so grab some more Bitcoin quickly. Time is running out. And what he means by that is that there will probably never be as many whole coiners again, that is, people who own a full Bitcoin or more, as there are right now, because we'll keep getting more people in the network who will compete with each other and buy up the available Bitcoin. And that simply leads to the distribution becoming broader over time, and there will be fewer and fewer whole coiners, and more people who don't own a whole coin. And this is coming from someone who was in email contact with Satoshi right from the very beginning. It's also being acknowledged here that soon, owning just 0.1 Bitcoin will be the new benchmark for being a whole coiner, because that's just how it is. Back in the day, it was awesome if you were in the 10 club, for example. That means you had 10 Bitcoin. That used to be the accumulation goal back then. Then at some point, it maybe dropped and people said, okay, 5 Bitcoin is cool now. And now, currently, 1 Bitcoin is the benchmark, but even that is starting to fluctuate, right? For example, British Hotline always used to say, get you 1 Bitcoin. But now he says, okay, the window of opportunity to get 1 Bitcoin is over. Most people missed it. Or congratulations to those who managed to get there. I know there are still a few of you out there who are fighting hard to get a whole Bitcoin. Congratulations to those who are really putting in the effort and maybe, I'd say, already have the right mindset and might still manage to get that Bitcoin. But Adam Back makes it very clear here. The peak whole coiner era is already over. And he's also issuing another warning. Some people are selling their Bitcoin to ETFs and public companies, meaning some kind of publicly traded firms. Guys, hodl. You won't be able to buy them back anytime soon, but other users are buying too. That's the way. So, this isn't a perfectly literal translation here, but what he means is, hey, if you, for example, switch your Bitcoins into treasury companies, into ETFs, and you take on third-party risks, and then you gamble away your Bitcoins in those ETFs or treasury companies, you're not going to get your Bitcoin back so easily. That's why he says here, use safe custody. I really like to use a hardware wallet here, a trusted hardware wallet. I can highly recommend it. With the code Bitcoin, Hotel, you can still get up to 20% off the fees when buying Bitcoin. And that's the big warning here. So first, it means buying Bitcoin quickly enough to still be able to accumulate a whole Bitcoin. And second, don't gamble away your Bitcoin by introducing third-party risks. Although, of course, you could also say that you can potentially create some alpha with Bitcoin treasury companies, but you have to be careful, right? Here, for example, someone says, there's still time. We'll have another bear market in 2026. Then Adam Back makes it very clear here. Yeah, the next bear market bottom won't be very, very low, but it'll be around 100,000 or something like that. Then someone else says, yeah, it'll drop to 50,000, 45,000, or something like that. And then Adam Back says, no, it won't drop to 45,000 anymore, because the 200, weekly moving average for Bitcoin is now almost at 50,000 US dollars. We'd never fallen below that before. And that's why it's very, very unlikely that it will happen again. And now let's take a look at why Brian Armstrong says here, hey, Bitcoin is going to replace all fiat currencies completely. And then you already get a little taste of the direction things are heading. And later on we'll hear statements from Jeff Booth. Attention, pay close attention.
They understand that the average person in America, even if they don't quite understand, interest rates and the yield curve, they understand that their money is worth less than it was 5 years ago. And they feel that something is inherently untrustworthy or broken about that. And so I do think they are looking for alternatives, and Bitcoin is probably the best answer. And that's why we're seeing all-time highs in Bitcoin prices.
So what we have here is a collapsing fiat money system. And while people might not fully get it, they do understand it on an intuitive level. They get that, okay, something is wrong. Somehow, I have to work more and more, but end up with less and less at the end of the day. Somehow, I need a second job, a third job, but still can't really afford my living expenses, or it just keeps getting much harder. And as we've already said, the fiat system is going to collapse. And Brian Armstrong made it very clear. Bitcoin is the best solution here. Bitcoin is going to replace the fiat money system, right? Or at least, that's what you can take away from his statements here. He also said that Bitcoin will become the new world reserve currency. So, he's really going pretty far with his prediction. And now, check out what Jeff Booth has to say. He explains in detail exactly how much Bitcoin you need, what price Bitcoin could reach, when that might happen, what perspective you should have regarding Bitcoin, what perspective you should have regarding the fiat money system, and why Bitcoin is designed to win while fiat money is designed to fail.
All assets in the world currently equal about $900 trillion. Underneath those assets is about $600 trillion of debt. If you include all of the liabilities and unfunded liabilities, but 600 trillion. And so if that debt went insolvent, all of those assets are worthless, right? Because everything would collapse. So people are measuring their assets within a system that debt is already insolvent, and they're pretending that debt is solvent. That debt requires more and more manipulation of money forever, exponentially more manipulation of money, so that the assets don't collapse and everything within that system doesn't collapse. So we're at the almost end of days. It could go on a bunch longer, but that system is getting more and more centralized, more and more controlled, and because it has to. We'll go into that afterwards. But every single asset, so instead of thinking 900 trillion of assets, think my house within that, this building within that. Well, if that debt went insolvent, this place would be worth nothing, like nothing. Yeah. Right? So there would be complete chaos. And so what does that say to you? It says, it won't go insolvent in that way, because you wouldn't let it. If a government allowed the debt to completely collapse and everything to collapse and it to be anarchy in that way, every last man for himself, you would, before that happened, vote for more centralization and control. You wouldn't let the bank fail.
So basically, we have a system that's already completely insolvent. And the problem is, we're pricing everything from a system that's totally insolvent. The system is designed to fall apart, but the whole thing won't happen suddenly. Instead, it will happen gradually. That's the big issue. If you know, as a government, as a powerful person, as part of the elite or whatever you want to call it, if you know this thing is going to blow up in your face, what do? You try to introduce as much centralization as possible. That means CBDCs, digital IDs, exit taxes. Then there are all the price controls, for example, capital controls, and so on. Even higher taxes, if you ask me, and so on, making people dependent on citizens' income, on social benefits, and so forth. Of course, giving central banks even more power, abolishing private banks, and so on. This centralization is currently being built up, and Jeff Booth is about to explain why this is extremely dangerous, but also why, in the end, this actually becomes the big bull case for Bitcoin.
So when I say it's going to collapse to zero, it won't collapse to zero, and instead, there will be liquidation, more and more manipulation of money. So from Bitcoin's perspective, if you just said, you have an open, decentralized, secure protocol bounded by energy. And that's my kind of 5 criteria on what this is. So that system bounded by energy, as long as it stays decentralized and secure, the only thing that would change this is if somehow Bitcoin broke and wasn't decentralized and secure. But that system bounded by energy will reprice all $900 trillion of assets.
When he says here that Bitcoin is limited by energy, what he means is that Bitcoin is, in a way, backed by energy. Well, back isn't really the right word, but secured is probably a better term here. Secured by hash rate. I think that's a bit confusing. In any case, he's talking here about the repricing. Yeah, of course. Sooner or later, everything will be valued in Bitcoin. And now he also explains why it's already so important to value things in Bitcoin, because that's the big life hack you can already use right now.
It's not Bitcoin isn't within the system, it's outside the system, bounded by energy. There's a really important differentiation. You know this, many Bitcoiners know this, but many Bitcoiners know it, and at the same time, they're pricing it as an asset within the system. Okay, so it's outside. If you hold it in self-custody, if it stays decentralized and secure, bounded by energy, it is repricing that entire system over time. So what does that mean? So you take that 900 trillion today of purchasing power, not 900 trillion of paper money, of purchasing power, and you divide it by 21 million. Or if you said that how many lost coins, you divide it by a smaller number. But let's say that number equals 43 million. Approximately 43 million of purchasing power in today's currency of Bitcoin. But what would happen from that system? From that system, you're living in the first global free market that has ever existed. And from that system, prices fall every year. Prices, as we automate, as AI moves faster and faster, as AI merges with robotics, as the free market adds more people to the free market, and those ideas compete to provide us value, prices fall forever relative to that 43 million. So that 43 million gains more and more value forever. So if you had a small percentage of a Bitcoin in time, that would be enough to live forever. And it's just, all we're talking about is the timing of when that happens, rather than does that happen.
I still sometimes feel like people aren't even aware of the sheer power behind this. You can also see that Jeff Bezos doesn't look at Bitcoin as something like, yeah, maybe this could happen. Maybe it couldn't happen. No, these are laws of nature that are coming into play here. These are massive forces that are bigger than ourselves. It's not a question of if this will happen. He says here, 43 million is the current value of Bitcoin. And the only question now is, how long will it take for Bitcoin to reach 43 million at today's purchasing power? And then it's also clear, for example, if you have something like 0.2778 Bitcoin or so, or a certain small percentage shares in a percentage share of Bitcoin, then exactly the following happens. This share will become more and more valuable in terms of purchasing power. And in fiat terms, if we save in that, it will of course become less and less valuable. And now we basically have to figure out, okay, at what point is this small share high enough that I can cover my living expenses with it? And at the same time, the Bitcoin price keeps rising so quickly that the price of Bitcoin increases faster than my living expenses eat up the purchasing power of my Bitcoin holdings. And that's what's so crazy. With Bitcoin, we actually already have the effect that our lives keep getting cheaper, while in fiat everything just keeps getting more expensive. So you just have to calculate, okay, how high does the Bitcoin price need to be, and how much Bitcoin do I need to have? And then at some point, you can reach a break-even point, especially as this shift continues. Bitcoin keeps gaining purchasing power, fiat keeps losing purchasing power, so that you simply have enough Bitcoin here. And Jeff Bezos simply says, it doesn't have to be more than 1 Bitcoin, it can be less than 1 Bitcoin, it can be just a fraction of a Bitcoin. Of course, maybe you only have to hold for 10 or 15 years, but then you'll get to enjoy being able to live off this Bitcoin stash here forever. And honestly, that's just absolutely massive. And you really have to ask yourself whether it still makes sense, first, to look at the whole world through the fiat lens, and second, to keep saving in fiat. But none of this is investment advice. Do whatever you want to do. For all I care, blow all your money at the casino or put it in a savings account. That's fine with me too, but then you might just miss out on a big opportunity. If you want to get started here, want to be a Bitcoin head king, want to be part of the Bitcoin Valhalla mission, then I'll drop a link below for 21 Bitcoin. Here you can easily buy Sirius, simple Bitcoin, and use the God Bitcoin Hotel. With the God Bitcoin Hotel, you can get up to 20% off the fees when buying Bitcoin. Exactly. Go there, check it out, use Sparfunk. Hey, they have one-time transfers there. So you can do one-time purchases, auto wallet transfers, there are limit orders, savings plans, and much more. Just stop by, folks. See you around. Until then, peace out.